Sup, friends? It's me, Matt. Welcome back to Hobby Vomit, channel where we talk about all the hobbies that I like to do. Like movies and books and games. So yeah, this is the Weekly Retch, in which I talk about the movies I watched, the books I read, and the games I played the previous week. Now, you may have noticed I did not put up a Weekly Retch last week, and that is because I recorded it along with a book review for, I think it was for The Curse of the Mistwraith. So I did a big book review, recorded it, did my weekly reg, recorded it, and my microphone decided to stop working halfway through the recording. Hopefully that's not happening now. I think I fixed it, and yeah, if this doesn't go up, if you never see this, that's why. So yeah, we skipped a week. I'm not really going to talk about what I did then. I normally just have a little sheet where I put what I watched, read, and played, and then I clear that after I make the video. So I cleared it. So I'm not going to talk about what I watched, read, and played 2 weeks ago. That's just lost forever, and that's just how it is. So we're just going to talk about what movies I watched last week, what books I read last week, and what games I played last week. So here we go. What movies did I watch? I saw one movie, saw it in theaters, and that was The Monkey. So The Monkey, if you don't know, is based off of a short story by Stephen King. And I believe it's in Skeleton Crew, the short story collection. And basically it's just this toy monkey. In the book, it's the one with the symbols. And apparently they weren't able to do that because of a copyright that Disney has from the monkey in Toy Story 3. Who knows if that's true? That's just what the internet told me, and as we all know, the internet never lies. So I'm assuming that that is true. So in this one, it's basically a toy monkey, and it just like carries death around with it. So same with the short story, and this is true of the movie as well. It just follows this man who has a son, and it kind of talks about his life in as his childhood. The monkey appeared, and death just follows it. So it just would kind of kill off people he knew, and it's just followed him his entire life. And so it's about him trying to rid himself and his now son of this toy monkey. And the short story is great, and the movie was directed by Osgood Perkins, who did Longlegs. Longlegs was his directorial debut. I liked it. I thought it was good. I think I gave it a 3.5. I thought the ending, it fell apart a lot, but I thought it was a great directorial debut. So I was still excited to see this because, one, I love Stephen King. Two, the trailer looked great. It looks like a dark comedy. It's not taking itself seriously. It's way over the top, super gory, and yeah, unfortunately, it was pretty disappointing. I it just wasn't very good. It would have been a great maybe 15-20 minute short film, but it being stretched out for an hour and a half just felt extremely undeserved. The acting was okay. The humor was okay. Some of the kills were good. I will give it that. The kills were fun mostly. Some of the effects were very bad, I'd say. I'd say the effects were anywhere from like good to very bad. So, I found myself in the last 30 minutes ready for it to be over, and that's not a good sign when your movie's only 90 minutes. So, yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't a big hit for me as much as I was anticipating it to be. So I ended up giving it a 2.5 out of 5. So if you're into like horror, like I love horror movies, so it's still worth seeing because some of the kills are fun and imaginative, and I love watching horror movies even if they're bad. So there's still a lot to like in this one. Just my expectations were a little high, I think, going in. So that was The Monkey. All right, what books did I read? So Bree and I, we did some breeding. So I think the last Weekly Retch we were reading, but we have now finished The Outsider by Stephen King. And I plan on doing a review for this. And so The Outsider, we both really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite Stephen King by any means. This is a Holly Gibney book. But I really liked, I'll talk about it more in the review, but I like the amount that Holly was in this. She's not even in half of the book, and I like that. She's kind of like a supporting if this were the Oscars, she'd be nominated for a supporting character, not a main character, and I like that. I feel like that fits her really well for a book that big. But yeah, I liked it coming off the Bill Hodges trilogy. I thought it was a really good, really good premise. I had a couple of little problems with it, but overall, I gave it a 4 out of 5. So I'll talk about more about that in the review, either this coming Tuesday or the following, because we also finished another book. So this is called, I'm gonna say Let It Bleed, If It Bleeds, also by Stephen King. So the reason why we read this is because this is a collection of 4 novellas: Mr. Harrigan's Phone, If It Bleeds, the self-titled, The Life of Chuck, and one called Rat. So Bree and I together read If It Bleeds, and If It Bleeds, this novella is a Holly Gibney novella. So it takes place after The Outsider, and it's just a short story involving Holly. And Holly is the main character of this not short story, but novella. And I really liked it quite a bit, actually. I love the premise. Basically, just it's I don't want to. I guess I don't want to say anything. I'll talk about it in the spoiler. It's just her solving a case, like a supernatural case, and yeah. So I won't say anything more about that. But the other novellas. So I had read The Life of Chuck probably a year ago. I just picked it up and read that because I saw that Mike Flanagan was adapting that. So I picked it up, read it, loved it. It basically, it's hard to talk about novellas without spoiling anything. It's basically just like a kind of an apocalyptic setting. It starts out and they're in a neighborhood and the world is ending, and you kind of get to experience the mystery of that unravels as you read it. But it's a really heartwarming novella. I really enjoyed that one as well. The first novella in it is called Mr. Harrigan's Phone, and that follows a young boy befriending an older man in town. He goes and reads to him, and this older man he's not into technology. Takes place back when the iPhone 1 came out, the very first iPhone. And so the kid gets an iPhone, and he shows this old man the iPhone, and yeah, I don't want to say more than what's on the back. On the back, it just says, let's see, a small town teenage boy begins an intergenerational friendship that proves to have a disturbing afterlife. That's all it says there, so I won't say anything more than that. I liked that one fine enough. I see a lot of people talking about how that's one of the favorite Stephen King novellas in a long time. I found it good. I mean, I certainly think it does the coming of age really well that Stephen King does. It's got like bullies, and he's he just nails that kind of coming of age story, and I thought it was good. I thought the length felt perfect. And then the final novella. So I read Life of Chuck and Mr. Harrigan's Phone on my own. Bree and I read If It Bleeds together, and then Bree and I also read Rat together. Rat was my favorite. I believe, of the two, I think it was Bree's favorite as well. Rat just follows this writer who he's dabbled in novels, but he's never been able to finish one, and he literally has had like mental breakdowns because of his attempt to write a novel. And so this idea comes to him, and he has to write it. This is the novel that he's going to finish. So he goes to his father's cabin to write this novel. And let's see what it says here. A struggling writer strikes a devil's bargain with an unexpected force at a cost that may be too terrible to bear. Sometimes I feel like the backs of books give a little too much away. I mean, I guess it doesn't give too much away, but we didn't know. We read it with knowing nothing, so we had a really good time with that. So those are the 2 books we finished, and then what else I've been reading. This has been on the list for a while, I know. I'm only halfway. I'm working on it. It's incredible, though, I will say. I'm really loving this book. I would be very surprised if this doesn't end up being a 5 out of 5 for me. We'll see if the pacing can keep going. But again, I may have mentioned this last week in the video that got deleted, but This is basically two novels in one collection. When it was first released, it was like a part one, part two, and then they just combined it for this. So I'm about to wrap up part one. I'm guessing. I don't think there's an actual part one, like a moment where it will say part two, but I'm assuming it's just about halfway through, and that's where I'm coming up. And yeah, it's incredible. If you're into like mystery, murder mystery almost, it's basically there's a woman who's accused of being a witch, and this magistrate and his clerk go to town, and there's a huge cast of characters that you know, it's one of those things that like you trust everybody at some point and you distrust everybody at another point. And it's just fun getting to navigate these trials or this trial along with the main characters, and it's excellent. Very it does remind, a lot of people say Robert McCammon reminds them of Stephen King. I can see that for sure. The character work is very similar, and it's just easy to read. It's just very easy to read. So, yep, been reading that. I've also been continuing The Engineer, the second book of the Last Horizon series. That's just sci-fi, fantasy, superheroes in space, ragtag crew on a spaceship completing missions, essentially. Nothing too deep, but I am about 75% of the way through that one. It's a shorter book. I've just been reading that on my Kindle at night, or if I go for a walk, I'll be listening on an audiobook. So crawling through that as well. And then Bree and I are reading. So we finished If It Bleeds, and now my family book club is picking back up. In January, February, we were at part one of Lonesome Dove, and we are now continuing with part two of Lonesome Dove. We will be finishing that by the end of March, and then part three will be the following month. So we just started today part two of Lonesome Dove, and I'm so glad to be back to that book because, man, I get why it's Stephen King's favorite book of all time. Even part one, where not a lot's happened. It's just all character work. It's all character work. The plot it's basically just a group of people in Texas. They are about to go set off on a cattle run up north. And that's it. That's all that's happened. It's just getting the crew together, and that's it. But man, the character work is top notch. There's tons of characters, but they all feel unique and developed and fully realized. So part two has kicked off really, really well. I will say it's more characters, which I'm fine with. My family's, I think, struggling with that a little bit. Some of them, because just going from not reading a lot into reading a book with 15, 20 characters, named characters that are important. It is a lot to follow for sure, but I think everyone's enjoying it. So Bree and I are glad to be back to that as well. So those are the books that I read last week. And then games, this is another short section, only played one board game. That was Dwarf Romantic Sakura with Bree. We're working on going through our campaign of that. Really enjoying it. I like it. We haven't unlocked everything, but I feel like I can already say with confidence I like it much more than the base game. And I feel like the designers or the publishers kind of did it a disservice. So there was the base game, had all these unlocks that you play through. Nothing really spoilers, just new tiles and new ways to interact with those tiles and so on and so forth. And a lot of people, including myself, when they say, hey, we're releasing Dwarf Romantic Sakura, which is, with cherry blossoms and stuff like that, everyone's like, well, is it just like the aesthetic that is different, or are the unlocks different? What's different? Like, is it different enough to where I can justify buying both of them? And the answers were just not very good. They were just like, yeah, there's some differences and some are the same. And so, luckily, I think some people like myself, I was like, you know what? Even if it's identical, I don't really care because I enjoyed it and played the first one so much, and it was a good price point. I know Bree and I will play it. It looks really pretty, so I'll just buy it. But I will say I think almost every unlock has been wildly different. I think they've done a really good job of making it feel unique and better. You can tell they've taken some of those ideas and morphed them into ideas that work a lot better for the game. So if you're on the fence between one or the other, get Sakura. If you have the first one and really enjoyed it, but weren't sure if the new one was different enough, I think it is. If you bought the first one and didn't like it, Sakura's not going to change your mind. It's still the same game. So yeah, those are the movies I watched, the books I read, and the games I played last week. What's coming up this week? So this is on Sunday that this is getting released. Monday, nothing for movies. The following Monday, we're going to be doing our Lighthouse discussion for the movie The Lighthouse for our movie club. Tuesday, I'm hopeful I will have a review for The Outsider up. Wednesday, I think Ian is going to be putting out a book discussion on either Dungeon Crawler Carl or on the first Malazan, or Malazan, rather, Gardens of the Moon, because he and I are going to start Deadhouse Gates, and then we'll start doing those book discussions. Thursday, nothing's Thursday as far as I know. Friday, nothing's Friday as far as I know. Saturday might be the other book discussion from Ian, Dungeon Crawler Carl or Malazan, I'm not sure. And yeah, I think that's it. We might do a live play on Friday, and there might be a board game video on Thursday. Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, that's it for this Weekly Retch. I appreciate you being here. And yeah, I'm Matt, and I will see you next Sunday. Goodbye.